I'm Jessica, 34, a software engineer with a secret. For 6 years, I was married to Michael, never telling him about my $130,000 salary or the separate account where I kept my savings. I thought we were happy until I ended up in the hospital with appendicitis. That's when he walked in with divorce papers, smirking as he said, "I filed for divorce. Taking the house and car, LOL." Little did he know, his decision would backfire spectacularly. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever discovered someone's true colors when you least expected it. Growing up, money was always tight. My mom raised me on her own after my dad walked out when I was just 3 years old. I watched her work 2 jobs, sometimes 3, just to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. There were nights I'd find her at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills, quietly crying when she thought I was asleep. Those moments shaped me. I promised myself I would never be financially dependent on anyone. School became my escape and my future. I was good with computers and math, spending hours in the library because we couldn't afford a computer at home. My high school teacher, Mrs. Harrington, noticed my aptitude and encouraged me to pursue computer science. "Jessica," she told me, "you have a natural talent. Don't let anyone tell you this isn't a field for women." With scholarships and student loans, I made it to college. Those years weren't easy. I was one of only 8 women in my computer science program of 60 students. Some male classmates made comments about how I was taking a spot from a guy who would actually use the degree. Their doubts only fueled my determination. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a tech company. I worked harder than anyone else, staying late, taking on additional projects, and constantly improving my skills. By 28, I had paid off my student loans and was making a comfortable $70,000 a year. That's when I met Michael at my friend Samantha's birthday party. He was 40, handsome, confident, and worked as a real estate agent. He approached me with a charming smile and spent the entire evening making me laugh. There was something magnetic about his confidence, the way he seemed so sure of himself and his place in the world. Our early dating life was exciting. Michael took me to upscale restaurants, weekend getaways to coastal towns, and introduced me to his wide circle of friends. We talked about future dreams, buying a beautiful home, traveling the world, maybe starting a family someday. I felt like I had found someone who matched my ambition. 6 months into our relationship, I started noticing little comments. When I mentioned a promotion I was working toward, Michael said, "That's cute, but once we're married, you won't need to worry about climbing the corporate ladder." I brushed it off as a joke. When I suggested splitting the check on dates, he seemed offended. "A man provides," he insisted. "Let me take care of you." Despite these red flags, I fell in love with the future I thought we could have. We got engaged after a year of dating and married 6 months later. I wanted a simple ceremony at a local botanical garden, but Michael pushed for something more elaborate. "We need to show everyone how successful we are," he said. I compromised on almost everything, telling myself that marriage was about give and take. We bought our first home together, a beautiful 4-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood. Michael insisted on putting only his name on the deed since he was in real estate and knew how to handle these things. I agreed, another compromise in a growing list. 3 months after our wedding, I received a significant promotion to senior software engineer with a salary bump to $90,000 annually. When I told Michael, his first question was, "Is that more than I make?" I downplayed my achievement, sensing his discomfort. When I received another raise 6 months later, pushing my salary to $110,000, I didn't tell him. And when I finally reached $130,000 a year, I kept it completely to myself. It wasn't just his competitiveness that concerned me. My friend Amelia had gone through a devastating divorce where her husband took everything because their finances were completely merged. "Always keep something for yourself," she advised me. Just in case. So I opened a separate account. Our arrangement seemed perfect on the surface. We had a joint account for household expenses that we both contributed to, while maintaining our personal accounts. Michael managed the mortgage, car payments, and investments, while I handled groceries, utilities, and daily expenses. What he didn't know was that I was putting away nearly 60% of my income. The gap between us widened slowly. Michael spent freely, buying a new luxury car every 2 years, expensive golf clubs, designer clothes. Meanwhile, I was careful with money, still carrying the lessons from my childhood. When I suggested we save more for retirement, Michael laughed. "Live a little, Jessica. We're doing fine." Our conversations became shorter, often centered around logistics rather than connection. Date nights became rare, replaced by Michael's increasing business dinners and networking events. I threw myself into work, finding fulfillment in my career that was missing from my marriage. By our 3rd anniversary, we were living parallel lives under the same roof. I told myself this was normal, that all marriages settled into comfortable routines. Deep down, I knew we were drifting apart, but I wasn't ready to confront what that meant. The week everything fell apart started like any other. I was leading a major software implementation that had me working 12-hour days. The project was important. If successful, it would position me for another promotion. I'd been ignoring a persistent pain in my right side for days, dismissing it as stress or maybe something I ate. By Wednesday evening, the pain had become unbearable. I was in the middle of a video conference when a sharp stab made me double over. My team watched in alarm as I struggled to breathe through the pain. Samantha, who worked in marketing at the same company, rushed to my office. "This isn't normal," she insisted, already calling for an Uber to take us to the emergency room. I protested weakly, thinking about the deadlines looming over me. At the hospital, things moved quickly. Blood tests and ultrasound, doctors with concerned faces. "Acute appendicitis," one finally said. "We need to get you into surgery immediately." I called Michael as they were preparing me for the operating room. He sounded distracted, promising to get there as soon as he could finish showing a house. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took effect was checking my work email. What should have been a routine procedure became complicated when my appendix ruptured just before surgery. The infection spread, requiring a more extensive operation and a longer hospital stay. I woke up groggy, in pain, and alone. Michael arrived 3 hours later with a bouquet of flowers that still had the grocery store price tag attached. He stayed for 30 minutes, seeming uncomfortable with the medical environment, before claiming he had an important client meeting. "You understand, right? This is the Hendersons. They're looking at that $1 million listing on Oakwood." The next few days followed a similar pattern. Michael would visit briefly, always with an excuse for why he couldn't stay long. Meanwhile, Samantha came every day, bringing my laptop so I could check in on my project, fresh clothes, and actually sitting with me for hours. 5 days into my hospital stay, I noticed Michael checking his phone constantly during his brief visit, smiling at texts. When I asked who he was texting, he became defensive. "Just work stuff. You wouldn't understand." On the 7th day, as I was beginning to feel stronger, Michael arrived wearing an expensive new suit I'd never seen before. No flowers this time. Instead, he carried a manila envelope. "We need to talk," he said, not sitting down, maintaining distance between us. His voice was cold, detached. I adjusted my position in the hospital bed, wincing at the pain from my incision. "What's going on?" "This isn't working anymore, Jessica." He placed the envelope on my tray table. "I've filed for divorce. I'm taking the house and car, LOL. Did he actually say LOL out loud? I stared at him, thinking this had to be some bizarre joke. "You can't be serious." "I'm in the hospital, Michael. There's never a good time for these things." He shrugged. "The fact is, you've never contributed enough to our marriage, financially or otherwise." The shock must have shown on my face because he continued, his words gaining momentum, as if he'd rehearsed this speech. "I've been carrying us for years while you play at your little computer job. I need someone who understands a man's needs, who appreciates what I bring to the table. Is there someone else?" The question came out before I could stop it, though I already knew the answer. Michael didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "Her name is Rebecca. She works in my office. She gets me in ways you never did." A nurse walked in, stopping abruptly when she sensed the tension. "Everything okay in here?" she asked, looking between us. "Fine," Michael said curtly. "I was just leaving." "The papers are all there, Jessica. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." And with that, he walked out. I stared at the manila envelope, tears blurring my vision. Inside were divorce papers, already filled out with terms that would leave me with almost nothing. According to these documents, I had contributed minimally to our assets, and therefore was entitled to only a small percentage in the division. The nurse returned after Michael left, concern etched on her face. "Do you need anything, honey? Someone I can call?" I couldn't speak, my throat tight with unshed tears. The physical pain from my surgery seemed distant compared to the searing betrayal cutting through my heart. That night, alone in my hospital room, I let myself break down completely. The beeping monitors and sterile walls witnessed my grief as I cycled through shock, denial, and devastation. 6 years of marriage, and he couldn't even wait until I was out of the hospital to discard me. Samantha arrived the next morning, taking one look at my face and the divorce papers before sitting on the edge of my bed and holding me while I cried. "That absolute bastard," she whispered, her own voice thick with emotion. "Who does this to someone they supposedly loved?" The following days in the hospital became a blur of medical checks, pain medication, and trying to process what had happened. My doctor was concerned about my elevated stress levels affecting my recovery. "The body can't heal when it's fighting emotional trauma too," she explained gently. Through it all, Michael didn't return or call to check on me. It was as if once he had delivered the divorce papers, I ceased to exist for him. 6 years together, erased in an instant. After 10 days in the hospital, the doctor finally cleared me for discharge. Samantha took the day off work to drive me home, stopping at the pharmacy to fill my prescriptions. As we pulled into the driveway of what was supposed to be our dream home, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. "Do you want me to come in with you?" Samantha asked, her hand resting supportively on my arm. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The house looked exactly the same from the outside, the carefully maintained lawn, the flower beds I had planted last spring, the welcome mat that read "Home Sweet Home" in cheerful letters. It was what waited inside that I feared. The moment I opened the front door, I knew something was wrong. The house felt different, emptier somehow. Walking through the entryway into the living room confirmed my suspicions. Michael had been busy during my hospital stay. The 60-inch television was gone from the wall, leaving behind only mounting brackets and exposed wires. The leather sectional sofa remained, but the coffee table, end tables, and all the decorative items were missing. Family photos had been removed from the walls, leaving behind ghostly rectangles of unfaded paint. "That son of a bitch," Samantha muttered, following me as I moved through the house in a daze. The kitchen was mostly intact, though all the expensive appliances Michael had insisted on buying were gone. The espresso machine, the stand mixer, even the high-end blender. In the dining room, the antique china cabinet that had belonged to Michael's grandmother stood empty, the collection of crystal and fine china nowhere to be seen. Upstairs was worse. The master bedroom had been half emptied, Michael's clothes gone from the closet, his nightstand cleared out. The guest bedroom that had functioned as his home office was completely bare, desk, computer, filing cabinets, all vanished. But it was the small home office I used that delivered the final blow. My desk remained, but my personal laptop was missing, along with external hard drives containing years of photos and personal documents. Books I'd collected since college had been cleared from the shelves. "He took my computer," I said numbly. "And all my backup drives." "Do you have cloud backups?" Samantha asked gently. I nodded, grateful for my tech-savvy habits. But some of those photos, they were from before everything was digital. Scanned pictures from my childhood, my mom. I sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. The physical exertion of walking through the house had pulled at my surgical incision, sending sharp pains across my abdomen. But the emotional pain was far worse. "Let me help you get settled," Samantha said, guiding me to lie down. "Then I'll make some calls. You shouldn't be alone right now." While I rested, Samantha brought up my medication and a glass of water. She found clean sheets in the linen closet and remade the bed with fresh bedding, helping me move so she could work around me. Small kindnesses that brought tears to my eyes. I should check the joint account, I said suddenly, remembering our shared finances. Can you bring me my phone? Using the banking app, I logged into our joint account to find exactly what I feared, a zero balance. Michael had cleaned it out completely. Over $30,000 gone. Is that even legal? Samantha asked, looking over my shoulder at the screen. I don't know, I whispered. I don't know anything anymore. As Samantha went downstairs to make us some tea, I noticed an envelope on Michael's empty nightstand. Inside was an invitation, cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing announcing the wedding of Michael Thompson and Rebecca Winters, dated just 2 weeks away. 2 weeks. He hadn't just been having an affair. He had been planning an entire future with this woman while still married to me. The timeline became sickeningly clear. He needed the divorce finalized quickly so he could marry Rebecca. When Samantha returned with tea, she found me curled into a fetal position, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. Wordlessly, she set down the mugs and held me, letting me pour out my grief and betrayal. She stayed that night, sleeping in the guest room after helping me take my pain medication and making sure I ate something. The house that had once felt like a home now seemed like a museum of my failed marriage, filled with painful memories and half-empty rooms. The next morning, I called my boss Diana and explained the situation. She immediately approved additional sick leave. Take whatever time you need, Jessica. Your health comes first, and your job will be waiting. The following days passed in a fog. I barely left the bedroom, relying on Samantha and occasionally other friends to bring food and check on me. I couldn't face the empty spaces in the house, the physical reminders of Michael's betrayal. A week after returning home, I received a call from a mutual friend, Brian. Jessica, I feel terrible. I just found out what Michael's been saying about you. What do you mean? My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. He's been telling everyone that you mismanaged money, that you were financially irresponsible, and he had to protect his assets. Some people are actually believing him. The injustice of it sent a flash of anger through me, the first emotion besides grief I'd felt in days. I had always been the careful one, the saver, while Michael spent freely. That same day, my mother called from Arizona. A mutual friend had finally informed her about my situation. I'm booking a flight, Jessica. You shouldn't be alone. No, Mom, I said, though I longed for her comfort. You can't miss work. I'll be okay. Are you sure, honey? You don't sound okay. I wasn't okay. I felt hollow, a shell of myself. The physical pain from my surgery was improving, but the emotional wounds seemed to deepen each day. I questioned everything. How had I not seen this coming? Were there signs I missed? Was there something fundamentally unlovable about me? 10 days after returning home, while sorting through a stack of mail that had accumulated during my hospital stay, I found a document that stopped me cold. It was a loan application for a second mortgage on our house, with what appeared to be my signature. But I had never signed this. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Michael had forged my signature. Something shifted inside me. The fog of grief parted, replaced by a clarity I hadn't felt since before the surgery. This wasn't just about a man leaving his wife for another woman. This was about fraud, theft, and deliberate financial deception. With shaking hands, I reached for my phone and called my college friend Lauren. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but she was the only person I knew who could help me now. Lauren? It's Jessica Thompson. I need your help. You're still practicing family law, right? Her voice was warm with surprise. Jessica. Yes, I am. What's going on? My husband is divorcing me, emptied our accounts, forged my signature on loans, and is getting remarried in less than 2 weeks. How soon can you meet? Lauren arrived at my house the next morning, looking every bit the successful attorney in her tailored suit and carrying a leather portfolio. She hugged me carefully, mindful of my still healing incision. You look like hell, she said frankly, but with compassion in her eyes. Feel like it too, I admitted, leading her to the dining room table where I had gathered what documents I could find. For the next 2 hours, I explained everything. The the marriage, the financial arrangements, the separate account Michael knew nothing about, the hospital betrayal, and the forged signature on the loan documents. Lauren took meticulous notes, stopping me occasionally to ask clarifying questions. When I mentioned my actual salary and the savings I'd accumulated, her pen paused mid-sentence. Wait, you make $130,000 a year and he doesn't know? I nodded, feeling a strange mix of guilt and defensiveness. He thinks I make around $70,000. The rest went into a separate account. How much do you have saved? Almost $400,000. Lauren let out a low whistle. And the divorce filing claims you contributed minimally to the marriage? That's what the papers said. A slow smile spread across Lauren's face. Jessica, I don't often say this to clients in your situation, but Michael has made a serious tactical error. Let's talk strategy. Over the next week, Lauren and I built our case. I gathered bank statements, pay stubs, tax returns, and property documents. We documented everything Michael had taken from the house, from electronics to family heirlooms. Lauren filed motions for an equitable division of assets and temporary orders preventing Michael from selling or transferring property. What about the forgery? I asked during one of our meetings. And emptying the joint account? Both potentially criminal acts, Lauren confirmed. But first, I want to understand more about Michael's finances. Something doesn't add up. Real estate was booming. He should have been doing well. With my approval, Lauren hired Andrew, a private investigator with experience in financial cases. Within days, he reported back with surprising findings. Michael's real estate business has been struggling for at least 2 years, Andrew explained during a meeting in Lauren's office. The market shifted, and he didn't adapt. Based on the records I've obtained, he's been living well beyond his means. How is that possible? I asked, thinking of the luxury car, the expensive clothes, the lavish gifts he bought for himself. Credit cards, Andrew said simply. Lots of them. Many maxed out, some in both your names. I felt the blood drain from my face. I never authorized any joint credit cards. Andrew slid a folder across the table. You might want to check your credit report. The revelations continued. Michael had opened multiple credit accounts using my information. He had taken out the second mortgage on our house with my forged signature. His business was on the verge of collapse, with unpaid office rent and advertising bills. He's been living a financial fiction, Lauren summarized. And now he's latched onto Rebecca as his next solution. Does she know? I wondered aloud. Doubtful, Andrew replied. Men like Michael are good at keeping these plates spinning, at least for a while. With each piece of evidence we gathered, my shock gave way to resolve. This wasn't just about surviving divorce, it was about justice. Meanwhile, I was working on my personal recovery. The physical healing from surgery progressed steadily. I returned to work part-time, remotely at first, then gradually back in the office. My boss Diana arranged a flexible schedule, allowing me to attend legal meetings without using all my remaining sick leave. Your team misses you, she told me during a check-in call. The project launched successfully. You built something so robust that it ran smoothly even in your absence. Those words meant more than Diana could know. While my personal life had imploded, my professional identity remained intact, something Michael couldn't touch or tarnish. I also began therapy sessions with Dr. Marshall, a psychologist specializing in trauma and betrayal. In those quiet sessions, I unpacked the complex emotions surrounding Michael's actions and my own decisions throughout our marriage. I keep wondering if I caused this by keeping my salary secret, I admitted during one session. Financial infidelity is real, Dr. Marshall acknowledged. But it doesn't justify his actions. You were protecting yourself while he was actively causing harm. My support system grew stronger. Samantha checked on me daily. Lauren became not just my attorney, but a renewed friend. I reconnected with college friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage, discovering that Michael had subtly discouraged these relationships. 2 days before Michael and Rebecca's wedding date, Lauren called with news. The judge has granted our emergency motion. All assets are frozen pending the divorce proceedings, including the joint accounts, house, and vehicles. Michael can't sell, transfer, or encumber any marital property. What does that mean for his wedding? I asked. That's his problem, Lauren replied, not bothering to hide her satisfaction. But I'd imagine it complicates things considerably. I received confirmation of this the very next day. While working from home, I saw Michael's car pull into the driveway. I hadn't seen him since that day in the hospital, nearly a month ago. My heart raced, but I forced myself to remain calm as the doorbell rang. I didn't answer. Instead, I texted Lauren, "Michael's at the house. What should I do?" Her response was immediate. "Don't open the door. Record any interaction. I'm calling now." My phone rang seconds later. Lauren instructed me to put the call on speaker as she recorded from her end. "If he persists, tell him all communication must go through me as your attorney." Michael rang the doorbell again, then began pounding on the door. "Jessica, I know you're in there. We need to talk right now." I approached the door but didn't open it. "Michael, my attorney has advised me not to speak with you directly. Please contact Lauren Miller at her office." "This is between us," he shouted. "You had no right to freeze the accounts. I have a wedding tomorrow." Despite everything, I felt a twisted satisfaction at his panic. "All legal communications need to go through my attorney," I repeated. He continued ranting for several minutes before finally leaving, tires squealing as he backed out of the driveway. The confrontation left me shaking but oddly empowered. For the first time since his betrayal, I felt like I had some control over the situation. 3 days after what should have been Michael and Rebecca's wedding day, my phone rang with his number. I declined the call, following Lauren's instructions to avoid direct communication. Minutes later, it rang again. And again. After the 5th call, I texted Lauren. "Michael's bombarding me with calls. What should I do?" "Let me check something," she replied. 20 minutes later, the freeze on his accounts was just formally processed. He's probably just discovering it. Stick to the plan. No direct communication. The calls continued throughout the day. By evening, there were 27 missed calls and a dozen increasingly desperate text messages. "Answer your phone. What have you done? I need access to MY money. This is getting serious, Jessica. Please call me. It's an emergency." The next morning, I was preparing for a video conference when loud banging on my front door startled me. Looking through the peephole, I saw Michael, disheveled and agitated. Against my better judgment, but with Lauren's recorded call running on my phone in my pocket, I opened the door. "What did you do?" he demanded, attempting to push past me into the house. I stood my ground. "I'm not having this conversation without my attorney present." "Attorney?" He laughed bitterly. "So now you can afford an attorney? On your little programmer salary." The condescension in his voice strengthened my resolve. "You should leave, Michael. Now. Not until you release my accounts. I have bills due, credit card payments." "They're not just your accounts," I said calmly. "They're marital assets being properly handled through the divorce proceedings. If you have concerns, have your attorney contact mine." His face flushed with anger. "You think you're so clever. You have no idea what you're doing. I built everything we have. You just played with computers all day." I could have told him then about my actual salary, about the savings he knew nothing about. But Lauren had advised strategic disclosure, and I trusted her judgment. "Please leave, or I'll call the police." As if on cue, a car pulled into my driveway, Lauren, right on time for our scheduled meeting. Michael's expression shifted from anger to uncertainty as she approached, briefcase in hand. "Mr. Thompson," she greeted him coolly. "I believe all communication was supposed to go through proper legal channels. Is your attorney aware you're here?" Michael straightened his posture, attempting to regain composure. "I don't need an attorney to talk to my wife." "Ex-wife, soon enough," Lauren corrected. "And yes, you absolutely do need an attorney, especially given the complexity of your financial situation." She gestured toward the house. "Jessica and I have a meeting scheduled. I suggest you leave before this encounter becomes part of our court filing." Michael hesitated, then pointed at me. "This isn't over." He stormed to his car and sped away. Lauren and I went inside, where I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. "Thank you for showing up when you did. I figured he might make an appearance once the account freeze processed," she said, setting her briefcase on the dining table. Now, let's prepare for the real confrontation. 3 days later, we met at Lauren's office for the first formal mediation session. Michael arrived with his attorney, a nervous-looking man named Peter Jenkins who specialized in real estate law, not family law, a telling choice. Lauren had prepared me well. I wore a professional outfit, my face carefully neutral as we all sat around the conference table. Michael avoided eye contact while his attorney shuffled papers anxiously. Let's begin by discussing full financial disclosure, Lauren started, sliding copies of a document across the table. This is an accurate accounting of my client's income and assets. Michael glanced at the paper, then did a visible double-take. His eyes widened as he read the figures, my actual salary history, the substantial savings account, investment portfolio, and retirement accounts. This can't be right, he muttered, looking between me and the document. I assure you it is, Lauren replied. Ms. Thompson has been a senior software engineer earning well above the median for her field. She has also been extremely financially responsible, saving approximately 60% of her income throughout your marriage. Michael's face cycled through expressions, shock, disbelief, and finally, the beginning of panic. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, addressing me directly for the first time. Before I could answer, Lauren interjected. That's not relevant to these proceedings. What is relevant is the accuracy of the financial disclosures you provided in your initial filing, which we have reason to believe contain significant misrepresentations. She produced another document, the loan application with my forged signature. We're also concerned about this document, which appears to contain fraudulent authorization. Michael's attorney whispered urgently in his ear. The meeting deteriorated quickly from there, with Michael requesting a break after just 30 minutes. He and his attorney disappeared into a side room for a lengthy discussion. When they returned, Michael's demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the aggressive confidence, replaced by something approaching desperation. I think there's been a misunderstanding, his attorney began. My client is willing to revise the proposed asset division to better reflect both parties' contributions. Lauren smiled thinly. That's a start. However, we also need to address the unauthorized accounts opened in my client's name, the empty joint account, and the forged loan documents. As she listed each item, Michael seemed to physically shrink in his chair. His attorney looked increasingly uncomfortable, clearly unprepared for the magnitude of the issues. The mediation session ended with no resolution, but a clear shift in power. As we were gathering our things to leave, the receptionist announced a visitor for Michael. Rebecca appeared in the doorway, her expression thunderous. You said this would be quick, she snapped at Michael. The caterer is threatening to sue if we don't pay the cancellation fee today. Her eyes darted around the room, landing on me. Recognition dawned on her face. You're Jessica. I nodded, unsure what to say. Rebecca turned back to Michael. You said she agreed to the divorce terms. You said everything was settled. Lauren and I left them arguing, walking to the elevator in silence. Only when the doors closed did she speak. Well, that was informative. Do you think he told her anything about his financial situation? I asked. Based on her reaction? Not a chance. Lauren checked her watch. The court date is in 2 weeks. After today, I expect his attorney to push hard for a settlement. She was right. Within days, settlement offers began arriving, each more favorable than the last. Michael was clearly desperate to avoid court and the full disclosure that would entail. But I had decided I wanted my day in court. Not for revenge, but for validation and justice. I wanted the truth officially on record. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, nothing like the dramatic settings on TV legal shows. Judge Harriet Wilson, a woman in her 60s with piercing eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, presided. Michael and his attorney sat at one table, while Lauren and I occupied another. Rebecca sat in the back row, arms crossed tightly over her chest. The proceedings were both methodical and devastating. Lauren presented evidence of Michael's financial deception, the forged documents, unauthorized credit accounts, emptied joint account. She detailed my contributions to the marriage, both financial and otherwise, contrasting them with Michael's representation in his filing. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke clearly and factually, emotion carefully contained. I explained my decision to maintain a separate savings account, acknowledged it wasn't ideal for marital transparency, but emphasized that I had always contributed fairly to our shared expenses. "And why did you feel it necessary to keep your full income private from your husband?" Judge Wilson asked. I considered my answer carefully. Early in our relationship, I noticed that financial discussions became tense when I earned more than expected. I made a decision to protect myself financially based on experiences I had witnessed among friends and family. In retrospect, I should have addressed the issue directly, but I never imagined it would come to this. When Michael testified, he attempted to paint himself as the primary provider, claiming ignorance about any financial improprieties. His story unraveled under cross-examination as Lauren methodically highlighted contradictions and timeline inconsistencies. In a last desperate move, Michael claimed he was experiencing chest pains and needed a continuance. The judge called a brief recess. A court officer accompanied Michael to be checked by a paramedic who found nothing concerning. Judge Wilson was not amused when proceedings resumed. Her final ruling was decisive. I would retain my separate accounts and investments completely. The house would be sold, with proceeds divided based on actual contribution, heavily in my favor given the mortgage payments had come from the joint account I had significantly funded. Michael would be responsible for all credit card debt in his name and joint accounts he had opened, while I would receive the car I had primarily used. Most satisfyingly, Judge Wilson referred the forgery evidence to the district attorney's office for a potential criminal investigation. As the judge delivered her ruling, I watched Michael's face. The reality of his situation seemed to finally sink in. He had gambled everything, his marriage, his reputation, his financial stability, and lost spectacularly. Outside the courthouse, Rebecca confronted him in the parking lot, their argument visible through the windows of his car. She threw something at him, perhaps a ring, before storming off to her own vehicle. Lauren squeezed my shoulder as we watched. "Ready to go home?" I nodded, exhausted but relieved. "More than ready." The first thing I did after the court proceedings was change the locks on the house. Though I planned to sell it eventually, for now it remained my home, and I wanted it secure. I hired a security company to install a modern system with cameras and remote monitoring, something I'd suggested to Michael years ago that he had dismissed as unnecessary. Reclaiming the space proved therapeutic. I rearranged furniture, repainted walls, and replaced items Michael had taken with new ones that reflected my taste alone. Each change felt like a step toward healing, erasing the visual reminders of his presence. The emotional process was more challenging. Some days, I functioned normally, focusing on work and reconnecting with friends. Other days, grief ambushed me in unexpected moments, finding Michael's forgotten cufflink in a drawer, or driving past a restaurant where we'd celebrated an anniversary. Dr. Marshall assured me this emotional pendulum was normal. "Recovery isn't linear," she explained during one of our weekly sessions. "You're grieving not just the end of your marriage, but the future you thought you would have." Work became an anchor. I threw myself into new projects, my focus and creativity sharper than ever. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Diana called me into her office. "The team lead position for the new healthcare initiative has opened up," she said without preamble. "I want you to take it." The promotion came with increased responsibility and another significant salary bump. When Diana mentioned the figure, I didn't downplay my worth or hesitate to accept, as I might have during my marriage. "I'd be delighted to take on the role," I said confidently. "When do I start?" As my professional life flourished, an unexpected message appeared in my inbox one evening. The sender was Rebecca Winters, Michael's almost wife. She wanted to meet. Against Lauren's advice, I agreed to coffee at a neutral location, curious about what she could possibly want. Rebecca arrived looking nothing like the angry woman from the courthouse. Her shoulders slumped, dark circles under her eyes. "Thank you for meeting me," she began awkwardly. "I know this is strange." "It is," I agreed, waiting for her to continue. "I needed to apologize," she said, staring into her coffee cup. When Michael and I got involved, he told me you were separated. By the time I learned you were still together, I was all ready. She trailed off. In love with him? I supplied. She nodded miserably. He said you were financially dependent on him, that you barely worked, that the divorce was amicable but you were dragging your feet. The portrait Michael had painted of me to Rebecca was the exact opposite of reality. I wasn't surprised, but hearing it confirmed still stung. When did you find out the truth? I asked. Pieces started coming together after our wedding was postponed. Then the court hearing. She shook her head. I had no idea about any of it. The money problems, the credit cards, certainly not the forgery. Rebecca revealed that Michael had exhibited similar patterns in a previous relationship, information she discovered only after speaking with his ex-girlfriend following our court date. I felt so stupid, she admitted. All the red flags were there. The lavish spending despite supposed cash flow issues in his business. The way he always insisted on handling the finances for our wedding plans. Despite everything Michael had put me through, I felt a strange kinship with Rebecca. We had both been deceived by the same man, both believed in a future that was built on lies. You're not stupid, I told her. Michael is extremely convincing. I was married to him for 6 years and never saw it coming. We parted with an awkward hug and a mutual acknowledgement that we probably wouldn't meet again. But the conversation provided unexpected closure, confirmation that the breakdown of my marriage wasn't a failure on my part, but the result of Michael's systematic deception. As summer turned to fall, I fully embraced my new role at work. My team respected me, projects succeeded under my leadership, and I felt a growing confidence in my professional identity. The woman who had once hidden her accomplishments was gone, replaced by someone who owned her success unapologetically. I maintained loose tabs on Michael through mutual acquaintances. His real estate business continued to struggle. The district attorney had decided not to pursue criminal charges for the forgery, but the incident had become known in professional circles, damaging his reputation. Rebecca had filed for an annulment, which was granted on grounds of fraud. Occasionally, Michael attempted to contact me, texts with vague apologies or requests to talk things out. I never responded. Those bridges weren't just burned, they had been obliterated. In October, 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I invited my mother to visit from Arizona. We had always been close, but during my marriage, the geographic distance had widened into an emotional one as well, another subtle way Michael had isolated me. This house has your father's taste written all over it, Mom said as I gave her a tour. She was right. The formal dining room we rarely used, the oversized furniture, the lack of personal touches, all had been Michael's preferences. I'm selling it, I told her. I'm ready for something that's truly mine. With my mother's help, I began house hunting. After viewing numerous properties, I found a modern 2-bedroom condo in a high-rise downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The moment I walked in, I knew it was right. Nothing about it reminded me of Michael or our shared past. It's beautiful, Mom said as we stood on the balcony. But are you sure you don't want something bigger? You can certainly afford it. I shook my head, watching the sunset paint the city's skyline in gold and pink. I don't need more space. I need the right space. The decision to sell the house was pragmatic as well as emotional. The real estate market had heated up, and the profit would be substantial. More importantly, living there meant constantly encountering memories and reminders of my marriage. When a young couple made an offer after the first open house, I accepted immediately, eager to close that chapter of my life. The closing date was set for December, giving me plenty of time to downsize and prepare for the move to my new condo. As I sorted through belongings, deciding what to keep, donate, or discard, I found the process unexpectedly liberating. Each item carried emotional weight: wedding gifts, vacation souvenirs, photographs. Choosing what deserved space in my new life forced me to confront and process lingering attachments. One rainy Sunday, while boxing books in the guest room, I discovered a photo album tucked behind the shelves. Inside were pictures from the early days of our relationship, Michael and me laughing on a beach, hiking in the mountains, celebrating my birthday. The happiness in those images seemed genuine, making me question if everything had been a lie from the beginning. I brought the album to my next therapy session with Dr. Marshall. I keep wondering if any of it was real, I confessed. Was he always planning to use me? Or did something change? People are complex, she replied. It's possible he did love you initially, but his own insecurities and financial issues eventually overwhelmed that connection. However, that doesn't excuse his choices or behavior. She helped me see that searching for when exactly things went wrong was less important than recognizing that the relationship had been fundamentally unbalanced. Michael had needed to control and diminish me to feel secure in his own identity. The question to focus on isn't, was it ever real? Dr. Marshall suggested. But rather, what do I want to be real in my future? By the time I moved into my new condo in December, I had an answer to that question. I wanted authenticity in all my relationships. I wanted to be valued for my whole self, including my intelligence and success. I wanted financial partnership based on trust and mutual respect. The condo became a physical manifestation of my fresh start. I furnished it with pieces that reflected my personal style, clean lines, vibrant colors, comfortable yet elegant. Nothing matched the heavy, traditional furniture Michael had preferred. As I unpacked the last box in my new home, my phone chimed with a text from Samantha. First dinner party at the new place this weekend? The team wants to celebrate your promotion. I smiled, typing back an enthusiastic yes. This space was mine, filled with possibilities rather than painful history. And I was ready to fill it with new memories. 1 year after Michael walked into my hospital room with divorce papers, I stood in my condo watching the sun rise over the city's skyline, coffee in hand, reflecting on how completely my life had transformed. Professionally, I had exceeded even my own expectations. My promotion to Director of Engineering had come through just last month, making me one of the few women in senior leadership at the company. The healthcare platform my team had developed was being implemented nationwide, saving hospitals millions while improving patient care. Financially, I was more secure than ever. The house had sold for well above asking price in the competitive market. Combined with my savings and investments, I had a net worth that would have shocked the girl who grew up watching her mother count pennies at the kitchen table. But the most profound changes were internal. The pain of Michael's betrayal had gradually transformed from an acute, stabbing wound to a dull ache that appeared only occasionally. I no longer questioned my worth or blamed myself for the marriage's failure. Instead, I recognized how the experience had strengthened me, forcing me to confront insecurities and emerge more authentic. My relationship with Samantha and Lauren had deepened into the kind of friendship that feels like family. We had a standing monthly dinner where we celebrated victories, commiserated over challenges, and reminded each other of how far we'd come. Remember when you could barely get out of bed? Samantha asked during one such dinner. Look at you now. Lauren raised her glass. To Jessica, who turned betrayal into triumph. I blushed at their praise, but accepted it without deflection. Another change from the woman I had been, who minimized her accomplishments to make others comfortable. Michael's trajectory had continued downward, according to mutual acquaintances. His real estate business had finally collapsed, forcing him to join another agency as a junior agent. The lifestyle he had desperately maintained through credit and deception had crumbled. I felt no satisfaction in his struggles, just a distant pity for someone who had tied his self-worth so completely to external appearances. 3 months after my promotion, my mother made a surprising announcement during our weekly phone call. I'm thinking of moving closer to you, she said. Arizona is too hot, and I miss seeing you regularly. She found a small house in a quiet suburb 30 minutes from my condo, close enough for regular visits, but maintaining our independence. Having her nearby healed a gap in my support system I hadn't fully acknowledged. You seem happier than you were during your marriage, she observed over lunch shortly after her move. More yourself. I am, I agreed. I didn't realize how much I was compromising until I stopped. With my mother's encouragement, I began volunteering at a financial literacy program for women leaving abusive relationships. Many of their stories contained elements painfully similar to my own: financial control, isolation, undermined confidence. Teaching them practical skills for economic independence became deeply fulfilling. The experience inspired me to start a monthly support group specifically for women recovering from financial abuse and deception. We met in a community center downtown, sharing stories and strategies over coffee and pastries. Watching these women reclaim their power, often after far worse experiences than mine, put my own journey into perspective. As my healing progressed, I cautiously considered dating again. My first attempt, a dinner with a colleague from another department, felt awkward and forced. The second, with a man I met through Lauren, went better but lacked chemistry. By the third date with James, a software architect I met at a tech conference, I felt genuine interest stirring again. Unlike Michael, James was secure enough in himself to be impressed rather than threatened by my career. He asked thoughtful questions, listened to the answers, and shared his own experiences without dominating the conversation. When I eventually told him about my marriage, his response was compassionate without being pitying. "That shows incredible resilience," he said simply. "Thank you for trusting me with your story." We took things slowly, both carrying lessons from past relationships. I was more vigilant about potential red flags, but worked with Dr. Marshall to ensure vigilance didn't become paralyzing suspicion. The growing connection with James felt healthy: mutual respect, shared interests, and clear communication about expectations. 13 months after the divorce, an unexpected letter arrived at my office, handwritten on expensive stationery, postmarked from a neighboring state. Michael's handwriting was instantly recognizable. The letter was surprisingly self-reflective. He acknowledged his deception, the damage he had caused, and his ongoing work with a therapist to understand his behavior patterns. "I don't expect forgiveness," he wrote, "but I needed you to know that I recognize the harm I caused, and I am truly sorry." I read the letter twice, searching for manipulative undertones or hidden agendas, but found none. After careful consideration, I decided not to respond. Whatever journey Michael was on belonged to him alone. I wished him well in the abstract sense of hoping he became a better person, but I had no desire to reestablish any form of connection. Instead, I tucked the letter away in a drawer, not as a keepsake of our relationship, but as a milestone in my healing. I could read his words without anger or pain, just a calm acknowledgement of a chapter closed. As spring arrived, bringing warm breezes and blooming flowers to the city parks, I found myself reflecting on the profound lessons of the past year and a half. Financial independence had quite literally saved me from disaster. The secret account that once made me feel guilty had provided a foundation for rebuilding my life. But beyond the practical lessons about money management and legal protections, I had learned something more fundamental. True strength comes not from avoiding pain, but from moving through it with integrity. The woman who emerged from betrayal was more compassionate, more authentic, and paradoxically more trusting, not of everyone, but of her own judgment about who deserved that trust. I had learned that self-worth cannot be tied to another person's validation. Michael's rejection had devastated me initially because I had unconsciously measured my value through his perception. Breaking free from that mindset was the most liberating aspect of my recovery. Most importantly, I had discovered that crisis reveals character, both others and your own. When everything familiar was stripped away, I found reserves of resilience I never knew I possessed. Sometimes life's greatest gifts arrive disguised as its worst tragedies. Had Michael not betrayed me so completely, I might have continued in a half-fulfilled life, never recognizing the cage I had helped construct around myself. His cruelty ultimately freed me to build something authentic and wholly mine. As I sit here now, watching the sunset from my balcony, I feel genuine gratitude for the journey. Not for the betrayal itself, but for the growth it catalyzed. The woman who once hid her success to protect a man's ego now mentors young women in tech, encouraging them to claim their achievements proudly. The woman who once feared being alone now values her independence while choosing connections that enhance rather than define her. Sometimes it takes losing everything you thought you wanted to find everything you truly need. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to positive change in your life? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, Please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that pain can transform into power. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth is never determined by someone else's inability to see it.